If I get up and change outfits in the middle of this video, it's because I'm still getting used to how my body looks after literally producing another human. In case you haven't noticed, I am wearing the same outfit. I don't think I look hideous. This video is part 3 of the series I am making talking about adoption and stuff. If you didn't watch the other 2 videos, they are up here and in the description. Also in the description are links to my music on Spotify, Apple Music, and I believe Amazon. Also, I have music on YouTube, and I have TikTok and Instagram sound, and Facebook. So if you want to use it for your videos, tag me in it. I have a new single coming out soon. I will be posting on Instagram and Snapchat, for sure Snapchat, when that goes live, or when, I guess, the pre-save is live. Oh, I'm actually editing the video right now, and I am putting it up a week later than I was planning to. The song is actually out already. That will be in the description as well. Go check it out. It is about addiction recovery. All of my socials are in the description as well. Follow me on all of those to make sure you know when my new music is coming out. Last part of this series, I don't really want to talk about, to be honest, because I'm kind of sick of talking about it, but we're talking about adoption. This is the main reason why people want to adopt. There will be resources in the description giving statistics about all of this stuff if you don't believe just one random person on the internet from North Dakota. So, most people adopt because they can't have their own kids. My adoptive parents adopted me because they could not have their own kids biologically. The people who adopted my child, which I talked about in the last video, could not have their own kids. I thought I couldn't have kids since I was 17. I had a miscarriage when I was 17, and I had a second one when I was 23. I struggle with a lot of things that made that more likely. One of those is PCOS. I have not made a video talking about that in depth, so I'm going to talk about it more today. So, I'm just going to go into a brief background of what basically I dealt with in order that led me to believe I couldn't have kids. So, the first thing is I was an early bloomer. I have 2 sisters that have the same dad. It tends to be genetic from the dad's side of the family. We all have it. One of them can't have kids. One of them only has one and has struggled a lot with infertility. I had like a regular cycle from when I was 8 to 12 years old, and then after that, it was all over the place. From when I was 8 to 12, it was pretty normal other than being so early. I went to a Christian school for the first part of my school years, so I didn't really feel comfortable talking about what I was going through, and I know most people don't in general in the United States, but especially in the early 2000s, I did not feel okay talking about it. I had extremely short cycles. It was like 4 days, but I would basically almost bleed to death in those 4 days, and I was in a lot of pain the first day, and I didn't want to eat. You normally think of like, oh, I'm gonna cry and eat my ice cream, watch kids movies. I just straight up didn't eat for like 4 days, every month, for 4 years, while I was still a child. So that leads into my next thing. I had an eating disorder for most of my life. I am 25, I have struggled with some form of eating disorder since I was 7 years old. I had binge eating disorder for a long time, basically caused by getting bullied, ironically, about my weight. And then this is pretty normal in the United States, I kind of went the opposite way when I was in middle school, and I starved myself. I struggled with anorexia for the vast majority of my life. I still struggle with it to this day. Before you say I don't look like it, here's some statistics on that. I was formally diagnosed with anorexia and bulimia when I was 21, but I have had both for a really long time. I had bulimia it got really bad when I was 21. I've dealt with it in different ways than just the stereotypical. Like purging, I didn't really do until I was 21, but I would compulsively exercise. I was in sports in high school, and I would use that as an excuse. So I was in track and cross country in high school. I was running pretty much every single day other than 2 weeks out of the year for 4 to 8 miles a day. I also biked 15 to 20 miles a day almost every day, and I also did ab workouts compulsively for 6 years while I was still a developing child. That also really negatively affected my mental health. I also have bipolar disorder, and I basically started experiencing more severe symptoms the worse my eating disorder, Scott, because in case you don't know, your brain burns about 30% of your calories in a day, and I was eating almost nothing. So my brain pretty much deteriorated. I don't remember about half of my senior year of high school, and I didn't show up for school most of the time. I almost failed high school because of my attendance, and I got suspended twice because of my attendance. So I have had a lot of struggles just with my mental health in general that are not conducive to, you know, physical well-being. Like starving yourself was kind of a bad thing. And then while I was super dissociated senior year of high school, I was not hanging out with the best people. And I got pregnant when I was 17. And I had a miscarriage when I was about 11 weeks. At that point, because I had been so sick for so long with my eating disorder, I would have actually probably been able to have a premature child. But here's what happened, right? So again, I have PCOS. I didn't know I had PCOS, but I had all the symptoms. I was put on a birth control against my will as a punishment. If you want to watch my adoptive parent video, that'll explain that. I was put on this birth control. I'm not going to say it out loud because there are a bunch of lawsuits going on about it. And you're not supposed to be on that if you have PCOS, but we didn't know that because I was adopted. So it caused me to have a miscarriage. I genuinely think I would have been fine. The child would have just been in the NICU for a while, but that didn't happen. So I never told anyone for about 3 years because I blamed myself. I thought if I had never talked to this guy, if I had eaten more, if I had tried harder, because I knew I had an eating disorder when I was like 12 and I tried to get help for it and nobody listened to me. I tried to get help when I was younger and nobody took me seriously, and basically my brain told me that meant I deserved to continue to hurt myself. I've also dealt with self-harm throughout my life, but the main thing I've done throughout my life is just not eat. I had blamed myself for years, and then the guy who would have been the dad, we ended up getting back together when I was 21. So I had never told him that any of this had happened, and one night we got super drunk and it all came out. I am a crying drunk. I'm gonna be talking about that in a new video, probably a week after this one, but yeah. I also dealt with, I also have dealt with substance abuse in my life, and at that time it was really, really bad. So I told him what had happened, and that was the first time I ever talked about it, and then I just shut it all away. Didn't talk about it again until I went to rehab. Again, I will be making a video about that, so keep an eye out for that coming soon. But yeah, I went to rehab, and that was the first time I ever processed, like consciously, that I had had a miscarriage. And that probably it would have happened anyway because I had PCOS. I did not learn that first of all, that I had sisters or that they had PCOS until I was 21, maybe 22. And that was when I found out that that was probably why. And I stopped blaming myself for the first time, because even if I had been super healthy or not been on the birth control, it might not have gone well anyways. Statistically, if you have PCOS, it's very common to struggle with fertility. So then I got out of rehab and I got a recovery boyfriend, and I got pregnant and I relapsed and I had no idea why. So again, I have PCOS, and I talked about in my previous video that I also have bipolar and that my PCOS symptoms tend to make my mania worse. So I finally figured out after going to rehab that basically every time I had PMS, I would have a manic episode. But because I have PCOS, I have an extremely irregular cycle. Like I said, it stopped being regular when I was about 12. So at one point I went, I think 6 years without having one at all. And one of those times, it wasn't PMS, I was pregnant. So I had a miscarriage. And again, I blamed myself for a really long time because I thought if I had just stayed sober, none of that would have happened. And again, it was around 11 weeks. So I didn't tell anybody because people sometimes don't take it seriously when it's that early. They think there's no way you would know. And then again, PCOS, the word cyst is in the name. I have passed many a cyst in my day, and you can't always tell the difference. One of the things I want to talk about is with loss of a child, that's like, I believe it's the third most common reason that marriages fail or long-term relationships fail. Now, Obviously, I've been talking about miscarriages in this video. That is a pretty common way to lose a child. Obviously, accidents, SIDS, death of a child, whatever. But adoption is also considered loss of a child, especially an infant. So relationships suffer a lot after that as well. My birth parents did not stay together. Okay, bye-bye. And I am struggling right now with that, actually. Again, when I had these miscarriages, I thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I blamed myself. I thought if I would have just eaten more, if I would have not drank, if I would have been sober, if my life had been more together, whatever. I blamed myself. So when I did get pregnant, obviously, I immediately went, I need to eat more. I need to do everything I could possibly do. I still struggled with an eating disorder the whole time. It was also the first time I reached out for help again since I was 12. I called an eating disorder clinic and asked, is it true that I have to be underweight for you to treat me? And they said no. So if you're looking for help for your eating disorder, they will treat you even if you're overweight. Again, I have statistics about that in the description. Most people with an eating disorder are not skin and bones. I have been in the past, but I have an eating disorder right now. Right now, I am struggling with an eating disorder and I am very clearly not underweight. So I have a lot of loose skin all over my body. I don't like how I look at all. Pregnancy made it worse. I had a C-section, so I have a bunch of loose skin and a scar now. And I can even pull my hands and my feet now. Never was able to do that before because I have constantly fluctuated weight. Because the thing with PCOS is it makes it really difficult to lose weight, but if you have an eating disorder, that's all you want to do is lose weight. So I would lose a bunch of weight really fast, basically from starving myself. And then because I have PCOS, I would just gain it back if I ever wasn't starving myself. It's considered by the medical community to be extreme weight loss if you lose 2 pounds a week and eat 1,200 calories. For me, I had to eat 800 calories or less and exercise for about 5 hours a day to lose 2 pounds a week. PCOS makes it extremely, extremely, extremely hard to lose weight. I just probably would have had issues with it anyways, but the eating disorder definitely made it worse and I blame myself. And so I wasn't able to talk about it until I actually had a successful pregnancy and when I will do anything to keep this from happening again. So I did reach out for help. They did say that even though I was pregnant, even though I was overweight, even though all of these other things that I thought meant they couldn't possibly want to help me, that they would help me. I did reach out for help. I have not gone to get help because, as I talked about in my previous video, I did not have a job for 7 months last year. I have health insurance, but there are limits. I had to get Medicaid to pay for the last part of my pregnancy when I had visits every single week and to pay for my C-section and all that stuff. Again, as I talked about in my first 2 videos, I am also adopted. I was adopted by your stereotypical upper middle class white family, and I still had to get Medicaid because my pregnancy went so badly. Money does not fix these things. I had 2 miscarriages. I thought I couldn't have kids. I literally did not care with my last relationship to use protection because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get pregnant. I mean, some people might shame me for that and be like, what, you should have planned better. But again, I genuinely had no reason to believe that I could have kids. And my sisters also cannot. Well, one of them has 1 kid, but they have a really hard time with it. If I would have known it was possible at all, I would have done a lot of things differently, but I genuinely thought I would never be able to have kids. And so again, I actually did think about adopting at one point. Not only did I think I would never have kids because of my body, but also I'm not straight. I'm gonna do another video talking about my eating disorders and how that relates to, you know, all of this. But I'm not into men at all. So I thought I would never have a stereotypical, you know, relationship. I always grew up believing that it had to be a mom and a dad. I have a lot of religious trauma that I gotta work through. There's a cat hair in my eyelash. I never thought I would be in a relationship where I would want to raise kids. So I actually considered adopting at one point myself. I no longer think that is the answer. It is not a solution to being infertile. It is not a solution to not being in a relationship. Why is there cat fur in my contact? Oh my god. Buy my single on iTunes to pay for me to get LASIK and all the other surgeries I'm gonna need. I did not think I could have kids. I did not think I wanted to naturally have kids. I genuinely do not believe that adoption is a backup option for if you can't have kids. To literally have the first time my body ever worked properly be the worst that my mental health and my financial situation ever was. It felt so unfair. I wanted to know what I did wrong to deserve it. I still have a really hard time with that. It has definitely made my eating disorder worse. Obviously, as I talked about, I had problems, especially with the second miscarriage, with blaming myself and her. And I did actually, after the second miscarriage, I did try to kill myself. I basically tried to drink myself to and I had a heart attack. This amount of pain that I'm in right now, especially because I'm sober and I remember all of it, and I'm on medication, so I'm not experiencing psychosis, it's worse. It's literally worse to give up your only living child and not be able to see them and take care of them like you're supposed to than it is for your body to not work. It's worse. If you've been through both and you don't agree with me, I'm sorry, your experience is valid, but for me, again, also being the only person I know who is adopted and gave up a child for adoption, it's worse. Again, the reason I wanted to make this video, even though it's something that, like, I've talked about before, it's no longer as big in my brain as when it first happened. I still feel like it's necessary to talk about because, again, most people who want to adopt, that's why. You think that adopting a kid is the answer, it's not. Again, I'm gonna say like I did in my last video, do not buy someone's child. Especially because most of the time, if they're in that situation where they feel like that's their only choice, they're not in a good headspace. I was in the worst place I have ever been, including when I was not sober, when I had to decide what to do. And even the social worker who worked with me said that she personally believes the system is extremely predatory. You're literally legally buying someone's child because you can't have your own, and that is disgusting, and I really hope you never do it. And if I could say what I actually feel about it without getting this video taken down, I would. So yeah, this video was kind of necessary just to tie the last two videos together because maybe you're still thinking, okay, but I would make sure I did things differently so that that never happened to a child that I would adopt. Statistically, it's gonna happen anyway. I've known people that were adopted older, younger, don't remember it, do remember it, all of the above, in and out of the system, and none of us had an easy time with it. There's really nothing you could do to fix separating someone from the person that literally made them. Obviously, I've had this discussion with a lot of people online in the last few months. If there's a situation where, for example, their child is in foster care and reunification isn't possible because they can't reunite, don't lie to your kid about where they came from. Do not try to force them to be someone else. Do not tell them that they should be grateful that they're not with that person anymore. Their experience is valid even if you think a child is not a real person and they're just a baby adult playing dress up. They are a real person, their experience is valid, and you cannot tell them how to feel, even if it's literally the lesser of two evils. I was never in foster care, that's why we were adopted, but from what I've heard from my friends who have been and people online, it didn't make it any easier knowing that that person was a terrible person or was too sick to take care of them or whatever it was. That's still the person that made you. Again, I had talked about in a previous video that I didn't believe that it would be different if it was my own kid. Now I obviously know it is. There's just physical, biological things that are wired that way. I personally think it's ridiculous that that's a thing. It is, it's, you know, for survival, but it causes a lot of trauma and grief, and you don't get to tell somebody how to grieve. Okay, I think that's all I have for this video. So if you like it, let me know. Give it a like, tell me in the comments. If you know anybody who's considering adoption or who was adopted and doesn't know what to do about it, please share this with them. It's I think it's probably the most important thing I could ever talk about because I don't see enough people talking about the other side of it and how it's not this beautiful gift that everyone romanticizes it to be. It is a struggle for the parent and the child, and we definitely don't get enough space to talk about it. So if you know anybody that is going through this themselves and maybe needs someone to be able to talk to, or just know that they're not alone, send them this series. The whole playlist is going to be linked in the description. I think that's all I got. Hopefully I don't ever have to talk about this again. I have to live with this for the rest of my life, and it sucks. And my mom's dead, so I can't talk to her about it. That was a depressing way to end a video. I'm gonna go get my cat. Can you go in the chair? There you go. This is Chonky Steve. This is my emotional support demon. Look at his face.